everyone, and welcome back into Holy Chaos on Tap, the podcast where the kids are loud, the theology is warm, and the only thing more chaotic than my house in December is my house in January and February and March and every other upcoming month. I am your host, Nick, an average Catholic dad, just trying to be a bit above average and keep my sanity while trying to get my kids out the door on time and in a world that clearly likes testing me, especially here during the month of December. And I think that is a perfect way to introduce the movie that we're diving into today as part of the season-long series, Raising Little Saints with TV Screens. It is one of the greatest Christmas movies, I think, of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Home Alone, the movie that single-handedly made parents double-check, triple-check to make sure they have all their kids before heading out the door. And we're going to go a bit deeper, too. We are going to look at the panic that we more often than not experience as dads, as husbands, as parents, the providence that comes with it, and then the surprising ways God shows up when everything feels out of control. So grab your drink and let's walk through the chaos together. It's Home Alone here on Holy Chaos on Tap. All right, you filthy animals. It's the drink of choice I'm going with this week is a Sam Adams Winter Lager, and the cup though that I'm using. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. It's one of the great lines from Home Alone. So let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Comment. Let me know what you're drinking this week. So putting together the episodes for this season, though. This season, Raising Little Saints with TV Screens, I was going through all the different shows and movies that I watch with my kids, and typical brainstorming stuff. You're just writing down and going through like episodes and things that you like and can potentially relate kid shows or movies to adult life. And I noticed that the start of my season, when I was putting it all together, when I thought about launching the season, was naturally taking me into the Advent Christmas time. So I could do specific Christmas themed shows and movies. And with me being the big Christmas crazed person that I am, the show that I thought would be a great one to go with is Home Alone. And there's probably a few movies that I think you can look at are centered around the chaos of family life, especially with kids. And I came really upon two in my life of watching Christmas movies: the Christmas Vacation and Home Alone. I eventually obviously have settled on Home Alone because I have actually watched Home Alone with my kids and haven't really introduced them to Christmas Vacation yet. Need to wait on that one a bit, as the comedy tends to lean more towards a bit of an older audience. Interesting though, useless movie trivia though. The original director, Chris Columbus, who directed Home Alone, was actually tied to Christmas Vacation. He was actually going to direct Christmas Vacation, and he quit because of Chevy Chase. I think a lot of people have probably heard that Chevy Chase might not be the best person to work with, but both came out a year apart from each other. Home Alone was in November of 1990, and Christmas Vacation was a year before in December of 1989. Both obviously would be great for showing the chaos of family life, but honestly, Home Alone was more of it had more of a Christian Catholic feel, and also, like I said, I've actually watched it with my kids and can relate to it. So it's actually a Catholic church where Kevin goes to find peace during the movie. And while it specifically does not say in the movie it is a Catholic church he goes to, there's a few clues that can point you to the idea that it is a Catholic church. The big one, obviously, is the Mary statue that's inside the church. I can't really think of too many non-Catholic churches that have statues of Mary. And then there's also a statue of Saint Joseph. I believe there is this statue is Saint Francis. Hard to tell from the lighting, but needless to say, I think the world of Home Alone, that church is a Catholic church. And I think when I grew up, more Home Alone was, it was, as I grew up, it was more a movie that I watched as a kid, so it's extra special to me. Christmas Vacation, honestly, even though they came out a year apart from each other, I think with my age, I really wasn't into Christmas Vacation or knew about it until I was older. I think almost in college before I really became obsessed with that movie. There are a few other notable parallels I'll go into with Catholicism and Home Alone, and the obvious connection is the chaotic family life that I'm going to draw upon between Home Alone and, I think, anybody like me who has three kids under 5, but just having kids in your house and just trying to get out in the mornings, and what you see in Home Alone, you just can kind of definitely see the similarities probably up from the movie screen to your life. Mornings at my house with 3 kids sometimes seems exactly like the scene when the McCallisters are rushing off to the airport. Anytime we leave the house, when we have to be somewhere, I just feel like it's pure chaos. It's why I called this podcast Holy Chaos, and then On Tap, because sometimes drinking just gets me through. Nah, just kidding. But trying to get out the door, it's like getting kids fed, you're getting them dressed, you're locating socks, you're getting shoes on, jackets on, book bags, getting out the door and into a car. It's a lot, especially when you're wrangling and herding cats basically with kids that are 5 and under. It almost always seems like something is forgotten too. At least so far for us, it's just something and not someone. And let's be honest, every parent has lived that morning or constantly lives that morning. It's very rarely the holiday card morning or the gentle snow falling, fuzzy pajamas, hot chocolate commercial type morning. When you have to go somewhere and you have kids, and in my experience that are 5 and under, like me, it's probably chaotic. It's always chaotic. Everything is loud. Everything is urgent. Someone's crying. Someone's hands or mouth hasn't been wiped. They have food all over them. And that's why Home Alone hits so hard, because mornings with kids aren't orderly. They're not calm. They're not linear. They're like a polar vortex that you don't organize it. You just brace for impact and hope you have all your clothes on and emerge successfully. And in our house, whether it's leaving for school in the morning or going to church on Sunday morning or trying to get out the door for some other event or trip or errand that you're running, it's always just it's just the same. It just seems like it's an ordeal. And there's always one kid. If we're taking 3 out, well, I'll just say it, even if you're taking 1 or 2 or whatever, it just seems like there's always one kid melting down, which would be my youngest because he wanted to put his shoes on first, or he wants to be the first to have his jacket on, or he wants to close the door. Then there is one kid who can't find anything, which is my oldest. He can literally be staring right at something and say, I don't see it. Where is it? And I'm like, it's right there. And then there's one kid who found too much. They're carrying too much, and that's my daughter. She's always walking out of the house with three different dolls, a purse, a random crayon, and her water, and she's just falling over with stuff, and she's saying too much stuff. I was like, yeah, you have too much stuff. And after all that, then you get the random questions like asking, can I have a snack for the car? When you literally just had breakfast and are already 20 minutes late. Holiday mornings, just forget about it, because they're already on a high and bouncing off the wall and excited for what's coming. So it's just, yeah, you're not leaving the house on time. You're evacuating a building, holding one kid, a bag in another, and just kind of pushing people out. What's funny is, I remember specifically one holiday that my wife and I both said how we wanted to leave the house early. It was, when you go to Christmas Mass or Easter Mass, obviously it's a lot more crowded than just a regular Sunday Mass in June. And so we were shooting for 9 o'clock Mass. We were shooting to leave the house by 8:15. And the reason, of course, we wanted to find a good seat at church, being that the chaos of our family. And we wanted to be in the actual church on Christmas and Easter. They have, spillover mass or another mass that's in the gym. And so the morning, of course, was very chaotic. And when we left for church, my wife and I both commented in the car how awesome we were at leaving on time. We just felt so accomplished and proud. We're like, wow, I can't believe we got out the door and we're on time. And we just felt so good. And when we got to church, the lot was packed. It was full of cars and not a spot to be had. We're like, what? And then we realized mass was already underway. So somehow we left the house at 9:15, but both my wife and I thought it was 8:15. And that's how crazy of a morning it was that we literally lost an hour. We were dumbfounded. We're like, how could this even happen? So yes, I am amazed we have only forgotten some things and not someone when we're leaving the house. And in Home Alone, the McCallisters' house is exactly like that. A tornado of cousins, luggage, coats, arguments, alarms, and 15 simultaneous crises going on. It's not, like your typical villain. It's not neglect. It's just loud humanity and life and family life. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Kevin just slips through the cracks. And that's where, the story begins. And honestly, a lot of our spiritual story begins in the chaos too. So once the McCallisters actually make it to the airport, they're on the plane. You think everything is great. Well, they think everything is great. You as the viewer know that everything is not great. Then comes the moment, almost like when we're in the parking lot and it just hits us and we're so late and we're like, Kate McCallister, the mom, has that lightning bolt realization, the one every parent has felt at least once, and yells the famous line, Kevin! But before that, she could sense something is wrong. And you don't hear a noise, you don't see anything, you just know, you got that feeling, that sense that something's wrong. This is the universal panic sense aura of parenthood, that gut punch moment where you realize you missed something important, not because you didn't care, but because life just got overwhelming. It's just so much that you're trying to do as a parent. And that fear, that feeling of losing control, that's where God begins to work for us. After we had our twins and my wife went back to work, my dad duty was taking them to daycare because my wife was a teacher. And so my wife as a teacher is over here teaching, and daycare is like the complete opposite way this way. So, obviously, and then my day job, my real job, allowed me the flexibility to where I could take the kids to daycare. So, but I remember I was so afraid of one day forgetting one because there's two. We had the older one, and it was just like, you take the kid and you kind of, you know what you're doing because there's one kid. But then when there's two, you're like taking one in, then you go back out, you take one in, or then you try to take both of them in when you're carrying car seats, and and whether it be at home or in the car, and you're taking them to daycare and then you're going back to work. It kept me up at night. I kept thinking about it. I was so conscious and afraid of it. I was talking to, one of my cousins one day about this, and I said, I'm terrified that I'm going to forget one in the car or at home one day, just because there's two of them. And he said, being aware of it is enough to make you will never do it. And it just kind of struck me to, it was like I had that fear, but that simple line gave me some peace and made me think, yeah, I have fear of that and losing control, but maybe God is in a way working to make me be aware of that, so I don't have to be afraid or think that I'm gonna have that happen. And the funny thing about Home Alone, when putting this episode together, one story from the Bible that stuck out to me, and it's centered around the Holy Family specifically, and again, when I'm brainstorming ideas and sometimes, thinking about things I want to talk about, I sometimes get ideas before I even formulate the show. It's like I have like 2 or 3 ideas, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could probably build a show around that. And this is what the story in the Bible with the Holy Family. The story I'm going to talk about is one of those things where it's like I had that thought of that story, and that's what brought me to the movie Home Alone. While the McCallisters forgetting Kevin is shocking, they're not the first family to forget their son somewhere. The Holy Family literally lost Jesus for 3 days. That's right. So next time you think you can't compare or live up to expectations, just ask yourself, have you ever forgotten your own kid after leaving home or the store? If not, then hey, you're doing better than the Holy Family, which is fantastic. No, well, you are doing better than Mary and Joseph because they did lose Jesus in Jerusalem during one of the most crowded feasts of the year. In Luke 2:41-52, the story talks about the Holy Family going to Jerusalem for Passover and then leaving to return home. So they go they go to the event with their son. They have fun, and then they're like, okay, it's time to leave, and then they leave, and they're traveling. They're traveling for a day, thinking Jesus is with the group, almost like the McCallisters. They have their whole family, cousins and aunts and uncles. It's like this with Jesus and his family, cousins and aunts and uncles or whatnot. They have, the big group, their neighbors and everything as they're traveling. So Mary and Joseph just think Jesus is with the group. And then they realize, whoops, we miscounted. And much like the McCallisters, they just like, oh my gosh, we panic. They panic and they're like, we gotta go back. And when they returned, and after 3 days, they finally found Jesus. Luke 2 tells the story with the perfect mom energy. It's like Mary goes up to Jesus and, son, why have you done this to us? And tell me Mary wasn't one breath away from like a full-on panic attack. I've lost the Son of God. It's like the Holy Family, like every other family, had a very tired mom and dad. They were human. They were overwhelmed. Yes, holy, the Holy Family, but yet still very much human, just like the McCallisters, just like us, just like me and my wife, you and your wife, or your, it's if the Holy Family lived through Home Alone Temple Edition, you can stop beating yourself up for not having perfect control of your family here in December or any month. It's okay you forgot those snacks. It's okay you forgot that toy, or you forgot, this or that if you're trying to rush out the door. You didn't forget your kid. At least I hope you didn't. If you did, hit me up in the comments. I'd love to hear that story. Maybe I'll have you on the show and we can talk about it. But even saints lose sight of Jesus sometimes. But here's the truth. Jesus wasn't actually lost. Kevin wasn't actually alone. God was already working underneath all of the panic. So in the movie, when Kevin wakes up, the house is silent. The kind of silence parents only hear in movies and probably only dream about, that complete silence in the home. He panics briefly, thinking he made his family disappear, but then he starts living like every kid's fantasy. But what's fascinating is how many things fall into place for him. He finds food, he handles groceries, he faces fear, the furnace downstairs. He begins to feel braver, steadier, stronger throughout the movie. And then the biggest Providence of all, there's the neighbor, old man Marley, the man everyone fears, the person that everybody in the town thinks is a bad person. The one you least expect becomes the man who rescues Kevin. And Psalm 91, he will give his angels charge over you. Kevin thinks he's alone, but protectors are already placed in his path. Providence is quiet, but it is real. And so one of the most Catholic scenes in the whole movie happens, again, I think in the world of Home Alone, in a Catholic church with Kevin's protector, Marley. It's such a great scene with Kevin in the church with Marley, a children's choir singing softly, one of my favorite Christmas songs, "Oh Holy Night," which, by the way, is it just here in St. Louis where that song is not part of the hymnal and it's not sung in church? I feel like it's such a great song, and it should be in the songbook along with "Silent Night," "O Come All Ye Faithful," all the typical, Christmas songs that you'd sing it, but it's not. For years, I feel like I can go back to when Home Alone came out. I just have never seen it in a hymnal. So let's give O Holy Night some fair airplay in masses. Come on. Anyway, so the lights are glowing. The chaos of the world, that Kevin's outside world that he's trying to escape momentarily goes away. He's still, and he's at peace for a moment. And then suddenly he sees Marley and his fear returns. You can see it on his face, and something happens that is unexpected. Marley walks up and smiles at him, speaks to him for the first time, and says, Merry Christmas. And let me just say that, had he done this at the convenience store earlier in the movie when Kevin was buying his toothbrush, instead of slamming his bloody hand on the counter that he just cut open and he was trying to buy Band-Aids for, and just staring at him like a lunatic with no words, maybe could have relied on him for help a little bit earlier in the movie. But I guess we wouldn't really have had a movie then if had that scene not played out like that. But it's just kind of funny to think about it, where like you go back to that, as you're older and you're looking at it, it's like, man, that was kind of a weird scene. But Marley asks if he can sit with him, and after he sits, we now have two people who are alone at Christmas for two completely different reasons, but finding comfort in each other's presence. And Marley speaks truth right away, telling Kevin this is the place to be if you're feeling bad about yourself. And how many of us, when we're down, upset, overwhelmed, we turn to God? It's just something about us in us where we just naturally turn to God when we're feeling overwhelmed or troubled. We just start thinking or praying. And how many of us go to church seeking comfort? The scene is great too because of the simplicity of sitting in an empty church. And for me, I don't know about you, but I love sitting in an empty church. It's peaceful, it's welcoming. In a world of chaos and noise, I crave the quiet. It's why I do adoration once a week. It's why when I pick up my son from school sometimes, instead of just sitting in the car line waiting, listening to music or whatnot, I put the car in park and spend some time in an empty church. In church, in adoration, in that quiet is where I can really hear my thoughts and what I think God is saying to me or calling me to do. And in the scene, Kevin gives Marley advice. Again, a theme we have found in previous episodes. I've talked about the innocence of kids and how even the biggest lessons can come from the tiniest of voices. We saw this in episode 101 with when I talked about Bluey and saintly perseverance and greener grass. And episode 104, I talked about it. When we see it here again in episode 106, we're talking about Home Alone. It's, Marley tells Kevin, you can be old for a lot of things, but never too old to be afraid, which is true. Fear is always going to be there. Fear of not being a good dad, fear of not being a good husband, fear of not being a good provider, fear of something bad happening, fear of forgetting. But it's here where fear meets wisdom from a kid. Kevin talks about how his biggest fear was the basement and how he made himself confront that fear. Marley is afraid to call his son because he's afraid he won't talk to him. His son won't talk to him. Kevin tells him the worry is leading to fear, and if he calls, at least one way or another, he won't have to worry anymore. He won't have that fear anymore then. Fear meets wisdom, loneliness meets connection, and woundedness meets grace. This is Advent spiritually. Returning, reconciling, realizing you're not alone, letting hope in again. God often speaks through unexpected people. And as we have seen in previous episodes that I've talked about, often though it's through the youngest people. God always especially speaks in the quietest of moments, which is why I crave that quiet. I go to the empty church, I go to adoration, and that's where I can hear God the best. As dads, we often feel like we have to hold everything together. I know I do. I put a lot of pressure and stress on myself to be the person that provides for everyone, protect everyone, and despite my best efforts, control everything. But Home Alone shows us what Scripture has always told us. You're not the Savior. You're not the one in charge of the whole story. You're not meant to carry every burden alone. Romans 8:28, we know that all things work for good for those who love God. Even when we panic, even when we are stressed to the max, even when life is loud, and even when we feel like we've messed something up, which feels like a lot, God is ahead of us. He's around us. He's behind us. He's working in ways we can't see. Providence is not the absence of chaos. It is God's presence in the middle of it. The end of the movie is definitely a tearjerker. And I'm going to reference another show. If you're a Seinfeld fan like me, I love the one episode where George is in Jerry's apartment watching Home Alone by himself. He asks Jerry, he's like, can I watch Home Alone in your apartment? He's like, we want to watch it. He's like, I just feel like I'm out and I'm doing something if I'm watching it in your apartment rather than at home. So Jerry ends up coming home and sees George crying and says, are you crying? Are you crying at Home Alone? And George says, the old man at the end gets to me. It's true, though. The ending is so great. I mean, Kevin's mom comes home. The whole family then comes home. There's a ton of love. Then Kevin looks through the window next door and sees Marley is reunited with his family. He's lifting, Marley's lifting and holding his granddaughter up and giving her a big hug. And then Marley escorts his son and his son's family back into the house. And as Kevin watches through the window, he smiles because he knows he's got to play a part in that redemption. And that's how God works. Sometimes he uses our chaos for someone else's healing. He uses our vulnerability for someone else's courage. He weaves our cries into someone else's restoration. Kevin was part of Marley's miracle, and you, even in all of your chaos, are part of someone's too. So I don't normally offer challenges or say the challenge that you have for this week, but I'm going to say that this time. Your challenge for this week, look for one moment where God showed up in your chaos. Just one. Maybe it was small. Maybe it was quiet. Maybe it was someone unexpected entering your life or saying something to you. Psalm 121, 7-8, the Lord will guard your coming and going, both now and forever. One thing I have done for the last few episodes is end with a prayer. And so I'll do that again here today. May God reveal his presence in your panic. May he calm your heart in the noise, and may he surround you and your family with his protection and peace. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. God is with you in the chaos of the everyday, in the panic of the Advent and Christmas season. That brings us to the end of this week's episode, and thanks again for listening. And as always, if any of the show hits at home for you, or you know a dad that might benefit from this episode or any of the other episodes, please share it with them, tag them in the episode on YouTube. And you can follow the show on Instagram and YouTube. Please give the show a follow on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube. Also share and like any content that we put out that speaks to you. It all helps to grow the Dad Network and help to show that we're all in the same boat and not alone as fathers and husbands. So thanks again for tuning in, and Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. Cheers.